Today I'm going to show you how to take your Mixdown from this to this without even mixing. What? Let's go. Hey guys, Dilby here. Welcome back to the channel. So mixing, right? It's confusing, it's difficult, it kind of seems like magic how some people can do it and some people can't. Maybe some people are just born with it. But there are a lot of things that you can do in the process of writing and producing your track that can really influence the mix and make it a lot easier or a lot more difficult to get the results that you're looking for. To summarize the main idea of what these things are, it's basically layering, sound selection, EQing, and the timing of your elements within your track. I've prepared an example of a problematic track that's going to be difficult to mix down. And what I'm going to do is go through and show you some solutions, some non-mixing solutions that are actually going to avoid these problems in the first place, thus making the mix a whole lot easier. As always, you can download the project files for this video. There's a link in the description that goes to my Patreon. You can get these files and all the files from my videos, and it's a great way to support the channel. Now let's jump into Ableton and fix this mix. Alright guys, so here we are inside Ableton, and this is a little project that I've put together to kind of simulate something that I might get sent. The track sounds pretty cool at first listen, but I've purposefully put in some mistakes that I pretty commonly see with tracks that I'm sent. And these are things that are done in the writing and production stage that are preventing the mix being as good as it can be or as easy as it could be. So let's jump in and take a look. This is what we're working with. So what I've done is like a really rough balance of the different elements, but I haven't really done any mixing so much. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through and I'll show you some of the issues here and how they can be addressed. So let's start with the low end, the kick and the bass, as that's one of the hardest things to nail, and it can really define how good or bad the mix is going to be on the track, or how easy or difficult the mixing process is going to be as well. So let's have a listen to what we've got. Okay, it doesn't sound terrible, but what we've got here is this kick in audio. If I look here, this kick is really long, right? This is the offbeat where the hi-hat would be, so it's taking up a lot of space. We've got this bass line, which is relatively busy, okay? So if we just look at the MIDI and the audio here, you can see that the bass and the kick are overlapping quite significantly. We've also got this sub. You can barely hear it, I can barely hear it. But look at this EQ. There's a lot of energy happening there, right? Now this is something that's really common that I get sent, is tracks with sub-bass layers. The area where this energy is happening is going to be either cut off by a mastering engineer or cut off by the sound system in a club, and all it's really doing is taking up space, taking up potential loudness, and stopping the low end sounding clear and punchy. The problem arises because you listen to the bass and the sub together and it sounds bassier with the sub on, because it is. Yo guys, sorry to interrupt the video, but I've got to tell you, please subscribe to the channel. Stop what you're doing right now, go down, subscribe, hit that red button. We're trying to get to 10K by the end of the year. We're almost there, so let's do this thing, all right? So without the sub, it feels like we're losing a bit of energy. But that's not really the case, because the energy that we're losing is unnecessary. So what I'm going to do is just straight away turn that sub off. Now we've got the kick and the bass. Already sounds clearer and punchier. So something that's happening with the interaction between the kick and the bass that's causing a problem, making it sound a bit boring, is the kick has been tuned to the root note of the track. So if we look at this spectrum, playing G, and the track is in G minor, and we can see that this bass line is happening on G. So that means that every note is happening on the same time, they're playing the same fundamental frequencies, so any overlap between the kick and the bass is going to be causing potential phasing or other issues in the low end, masking, etc. And at the very least, it just sounds boring. So what's been done to the bass to kind of alleviate this problem is some extreme sidechaining, and this is really common what I see. This doesn't give the best, most natural feel. I would recommend sidechaining a bit less and having a kick that is more suitable. So I'm going to bring in this kick here, which is actually playing F. So it's 2 semitones lower than the bass. We don't need this kick top. So this new kick that I've added here is actually tuned to F. So there's going to be some melodic interaction between the kick and the bass. It's also, because of the envelope here and the MIDI, going to be much shorter. That's going to give more space for the bass and create less problems. A-B them. Now when you A-B them, at first listen you think, oh, this kick's a bit kind of heavier, it's giving a bit more in the low end. But again, it's not really necessary. We've got a relatively busy bass line with plenty of low end on it. So we really don't need this giant kick to be smashing through the track. This is going to give a much more balanced and kind of punchy feel. So there's issue 1, solved. So now let's listen to the claps. Okay, sounds fine, but if we go into it, we'll see. We've got a lot of unnecessary frequencies. This is going to be pushing the transients up on every second kick, which is going to be triggering the limiter. And as we're adding in the melodic elements in the vocal, this is going to be adding up in this kind of low area around between like 100 and 300 hertz, maybe up to 500 hertz. And this is where you get the effect of tracks sounding muddy. So what we can do, just cut that unnecessary frequencies away. It sounds pretty similar, but it's going to be less problems in the low mids. Okay, so this is all pretty basic stuff. Most people know this. Now let's come on to the hats. Sounds like a cool groove. Sounds a bit thin. So then in the mixing process, you're going to want to turn them up. But it's not really fixing the problem. Adding volume isn't adding body. So what's happened here is the producer has probably watched a bunch of YouTube tutorials and decided that it's really important to cut all your hats and just leave the absolute highs on there, right? The fundamental frequency. But what this does is leaves your hat sounding really thin and brittle, and in order to compensate for that, you end up adding extra layers. This just creates chaos in the high end and is never going to solve the problem of your track sounding thin and brittle in the hats. Let's just take this away. Okay, we'll turn these off. So it doesn't sound too much different, but this is going to add up and it's going to make our hat sound much fuller. So we'll bring in the next hat. Shaker. So you can hear it's already sounding more full in the drums, right? Now this hypothetical producer has added in a couple of top loops to compensate for the lack of body in the hats, right? Top loop sounds fine, but yeah, I mean, maybe it sounds better with it. Okay, cool. Another top loop. The drums are certainly sounding fuller and have a lot more going on, but I would argue that that's not necessary if we kind of mix them properly, right? So let's take away this high cut again and listen to what's happening here. So now we've got this clap happening and these hats happening, and it's really starting to build up, which is probably why the producer cut away all those frequencies. So what I would suggest here, because it is adding some groove, that we edit the envelope, clip, gain, And we'll just leave these hats that are kind of adding some swing and groove. Oh. So I'm just going to do this quite rough. I would suggest doing it a bit more delicately. Okay. I'll select that, duplicate it, and then we've just got this one here which we missed. And fix up this. So on the end here, we've got like a percussion hit, which is actually clashing a bit. So I'm just going to take that out. Cool. So that is actually the stuff that was in this loop that was making it sound better. Now add this loop. Add back the frequencies to this loop. I think it sounds better without this loop, to be honest. Cool, so I feel like we've fixed the hats there. Percussion, so we've got this wood block. It's fine, low percussion loop. Right, so that sounds kind of cool in my headphones, but that's clashing with the bass quite significantly, right? So I'm going to add in an EQ. I'm really wanting to protect this kind of sub-frequency range, so it's just the kick and the bass playing, so that they're really strong and punchy. I'm getting the vibe of this percussion loop, but without the chaos in the low end. Let's try adding in some LFO tool. So we still got the vibe that it was offering, but it's just a lot more controlled and fitting into the track better. All right, so that's the kind of foundation of the track sorted. We've got the kick, the bass, and the drums sounding good. Okay, so let's have a listen to the before and after. Before. And after. So I haven't really adjusted any volumes or anything, but it sounds a lot more balanced and punchy to me. The low end is not so boomy, it's tighter, and the highs are more full sounding, not so brittle. And that had more to do with sound selection and layering than mixing per se, but it has a really big influence on the mix and how easy the track is to balance and mix. Now let's move on to the melodies and the vocals, as this is also providing some serious issues. So let's take a listen. We fixed up that stuff. Right, so there's just a lot going on here. So let's dissect what's happening. We've got this chord stab. Okay, it's very low. Barely audible, right? But this is something I hear very common, is like a massive build-up in this area here. So what we can do to combat that, just put it up an octave. So now when we play it with the bass, it stands out. If you're trying to hide your sounds in your track by pulling down the volume or pulling down filter too much, it's quite a good indication that they're not necessary. So we've got these stabs here as well. Cool, so that's actually sounding like a really good groove. Nice. What we could also do is make this a little bit more prominent by increasing the envelope amount. Now it's sitting up loud and proud in the track, and it's clearly playing a role. It's interacting with this other stab. Okay, cool, it's in. Now we've got this bass top. This is another very common thing that I hear. right? So layered with the sub we had before. It's like thickening up the bass, but it's just kind of causing chaos to my ears, you know? So what I would do here is just literally turn it off. So I'm just going to delete that. Now we've got this melody loop. Okay, by itself, it sounds cool, but it's not interacting with the other elements of the track. It's kind of clashing with the bass line. Not good. Stabs. It's just, again, it's not interacting right. So let's just assume that this is something that the producer put a lot of time and effort into making, right? They sound designed it, they wrote the melody, they thought it was cool. Maybe it was even the first thing that they did when they came up with the track. Now they're really, really connected to it and they just don't want to leave it out. So they might start turning it down. Yeah, see, it's like minus 15. Yeah, it sounds cool when you turn it down. So I'll maybe put some sidechain on it. And they're so used to hearing it that they just leave it there, right? Turn it off. If something's not really adding a lot of value to your track, get rid of it. Doesn't matter how long it took you to make. Doesn't matter how integral it was to the inspiration of your track. If it's not adding value to the end result, it's gone. Cool. Now let's have a look at this pad and string. Pad. It's a cool sound. But it's a huge sound. Right, so we could try EQing it. Now it's not interfering with the high end so much, but there's still a lot of energy here. Better, but I still want to turn it down, which is a good indication that maybe I should turn it off. Let's just try adding in the string. So I can barely hear the string, to be honest. What if we turn off the pad? Now I can hear the string and it sounds kind of too loud, right? So let's duplicate this one. Boom, boom. So we've got a before and after. Cool. Pad. I'm going to say we take it out here. So I will bring this back how it was. Now the point here is that these elements sound good, especially on their own, but they're not adding value to the track, and in fact they can be detracting value from the track. So pad is out. Now we've got this Juno riff. Okay, so it's a cool sound. It's kind of, let's say, maybe the hook or the theme of the track, but it's playing very, very regularly, right? Which is going to get boring. We've also got this vocal. Okay, so they sound really good together. They're playing the same notes. Okay, so they're interacting very nicely harmonically, but they're both very strong elements. They're fighting for the same space. They're happening very regularly, which is going to get boring, right? So it's not only affecting the mix, it's affecting the listenability of the track and the engagement. Having both of these playing at the same time is starting to make the track sound extremely loopy. So I'm going to delete them. I've got this amended Juno riff, which is just playing the same thing, but less frequently. So there's more space for the other elements to breathe. So we've got this vocal amended. Okay, this comes from a longer loop. The loop is 4 bars. and here we're just looping the last two bars, sorry, the last bar. So now, so it's creating some call and response instead of just fighting for the same space over the top of each other. But it feels like there's something missing, which is why I created this new bass top. So we can see in the MIDI here, it's doing a similar pattern to this. Bring it up. Cool. So now this is going to interact with the Juno sound and the vocal sound, which I believe is going to add more value. It's not very audible, right? So what's going on? Where are we sitting in the frequency spectrum? In this low mids again, right? That's where we want everything to sit because stuff sounds really cool there. But let's try. So all I did there was press Command A to select all the notes and then Shift and the up arrow to bring it up an octave. Okay. Right, so we've done some small fixes there. So to me that makes a huge difference, and I know which one sounds cleaner, punchier, and more professional and more listenable to my ears. But this, like I said at the start, it doesn't sound bad. And it sounds really full because we've got that big sub, we've got a lot going on, a lot of layers. But this has a lot more space, a lot more punch. All of the elements are a lot more defined. So obviously this was quite exaggerated, but I really thought it was important to illustrate some of the writing and production issues that really influence your mixdown. I hear from a lot of people that they have trouble mixing their tracks, and people send me their tracks to mix because they're having trouble mixing them. And very frequently I see these kind of issues that stem from the writing and production stage that actually influence the ability for someone to mix the track well. And it's not just the skill of the person trying to mix the track, it's the fundamental potential that that combination of elements have to be mixed well. If you select sounds that complement each other well, have space in the frequency and the timing of your track to stand out and do their job without clashing, then your whole track is going to be so much easier to mix. Like always, you can download this project file from my Patreon if you want to get in there and have a look at the production and what I've done to make some of these sounds. You can grab them and use them in your tracks as well. If you like the sounds in the project, most of them actually come from my sample pack, Underground Shades of House. There's a link up here to House of Loop where you can download it. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you can see how influential this can be on your productions. To boil it down into one sentence, less is more. And when I realized this, it actually changed the game in terms of mixing for me. Put less, more meaningful elements that have space in the track, and mixing is easy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. It really helps the channel. And if you're looking for something to watch next, then check out this video. Alright, well that's it from me today. We'll catch you next time. Peace!
Let them see those atomic isotopes that spit in nature. So give it to them. Give them that love.